Someone said clearing the mind. Oh, where'd it go? Someone said clearing the mind allowed everything in, so beware. In my experience, it's simply what you see in. Don't know why it all seems so simple to me. Bread is ready to come out of the oven, a dozen mini loaves. Love that. Beautiful. Well, hello. Welcome to my living room. My name is Lana Labonte. If this is the first time you are tuning in, welcome, welcome, welcome. There's always something to explore. There is always something more. So this is where I just share whatever is dropping in from me. Today's theme, if you didn't notice the title, are you inclusive or exclusive? What does that bring up for you? What does that feel like in your body when someone says, oh, you're inclusive, or oh, you're exclusive, or inclusivity versus exclusivity? That in a world where that's been used to manipulate, at least I found from my personal experience. So I was outside, and as I do, I'm moving around. I'm just kind of like percolating. This just dropped in. I was like, wow. And this is not really that it just dropped in. It's just the dialogue around it. The idea that I know from myself in the past, I've watched cycles where I've become more protective of my circle, that people have fallen out of my life. Because, you know, we all have people come into our lives for a time, for a season. Not everybody's meant to keep going and growing with you. And we need to honor this. We need to also celebrate and grieve it. But we also have to be aware and mindful of those who we have allowed into our inner circle, into our sacred space. Because when we just let anybody in, then it can run amok. You can end up letting the wrong people into your lives and basically handing over your heart, and then wondering later, why? Why did my heart hurt? Why did I feel dropped? Why did I feel disrespected? Not held the way I want to be held. So we have to go through experiences to recognize, and most of us are learning this in our past, right? We're going through these experiences and we're evaluating, where in the past have I just let anybody into my life? And maybe I need to be a little bit more selective, a little bit more exclusive. Not just this idea that inclusivity means, oh, we're supposed to be all accepting of everyone and everything, like we're supposed to be a doormat and just let anybody walk all over us. That's part of the culture, the cults of personality. And look at the world around us right now. Like, what is going on? This equality, this equanimity, this, what's the word they're using right now? Equality and equity. Those two words don't go hand in hand. Equity means money. There's just no, that's a whole dialogue and a conversation for another time. But the truth of the matter is, we have a lot of hurt people out there in the world today. And when you recognize that, you can also be compassionate, but also protect your heart from hurt people. Because what happens is hurt people hurt people. And when you let hurt people into your life and you are not discerning with that, and those people are seeking to get their needs met, and often what we do is when we're in those shadow spaces, when we're operating from the shadows, like when people talk about shadow work, it's the fact that most people are working from the shadows and they don't realize, they haven't dove deep within themselves, that they're seeking going without. When reality is everything that's operating from below the surface that they're unwilling to recognize, to take a look at and confront, is what is unconsciously running the show. That is the unseen program. And everybody's shit shows, good and bad. So when we don't discern the people we allow into our sacred space, that's when people take advantage of us. We don't establish a standard. We let down our guard. We don't establish boundaries. In order for this relationship to exist, I need you to also respect these boundaries, these situations. And if they're unable to do that, I'm sorry, this isn't a fit. And so we have to know ourselves first. You can't just assume that everybody's going to be able to, schmooze their way on in and align with you. A lot of times, I know myself. Here's my personal experience. I have always been that exuberant, young, naive child. I let that come out because I don't want that to ever die. But as I've gotten older and wiser, I've also had to call in my inner wise woman and integrate that with my inner child. That it's okay to play, but I'm not going to pay as a result of people taking advantage of me, which I have allowed quite often in the past. Assuming they thinking I'm naive because I'm enthusiastic or that I give so much. My giving is not to get. My giving is natural because I want everyone to feel loved and, yes, included. But I have also found that has been at my expense. That people will take. When you give them an inch, they'll try to take a mile. These are coming from unhealthy, toxic individuals who are still themselves trying to get their needs met, operating from the lack department, operating from the survival mode versus the thrival. I have an abundance to give and to receive. This really has a lot to do with whether or not we are financially secure and able to, bring in money. All of this is connected in our lives, and it shows in the wounded mode. So the wounded mode is essentially going to wound others. If you are that backed into a corner animal defending itself all the time, you often will turn around and do things you might not really feel good about later when you look back. And we've all been there. We've all been there. We've all been takers and we've all been givers. So what has been done to us, we have probably done ourselves. Recognize the other as you. Don't think that it's just being done to you, because you allow also often what you're willing to do. What you recognize in another is a part of you too. Good, bad, ugly, doesn't really matter. You can label it whatever you want. Labels will just limit you. Have more of an open heart and an open mind to recognize, and don't just play the Pollyanna, they'll get better at this, or, you're hoping for the best, but you're not accepting what is. That's the root of a lot of suffering, is attaching to the idea of an outcome and expectation that you have. A perfectionist idea is what I like to call it. I'm such a giving person, I would expect the same in return. Well, that's all well and good, and it's ideal. But what in your body is telling you the truth of the matter? Like the body's wisdom, it will always tell you what is misaligned in the mind. Feel a discomfort in the body? Tap into that. What is that trying to tell me in this moment? The mind will run amok and come up with all sorts of stories that aren't true. And the body will demonstrate the truth. Okay, I have a niggle here, I have a tension there. Something's not right up in here. But you got to be really tapped in, tuned into your own body's wisdom and trust it. Not what this thing's going to tell you all the time, because this will get you in trouble every time. Because you want to have the Pollyanna idea that, well, everybody's got something going on, I'll just make an excuse for it. I'll just create a story around why people are the way they are toward me. Instead of owning where you had a gut response, your body was telling you something wasn't right, something was off, or you walked away hurt. Like, ugh, that felt really hurtful. And I'm the first to tell you right now, I don't know what people think of me. There's an assumption that I know sometimes I feel like people think that I got my shit together, that I'm all just, I'll take care of myself, that I don't need help, or that, she's, whatever. And I feel like that's more of an animosity than an actual seeing me as a human, or that I myself also feel hurt when people assume or make judgments upon me, or even project something upon me that doesn't align and it isn't even who I am. Inclusivity and exclusivity. Be mindful of those people in your lives, in your life, my life. This is what I've been doing. I watch over the cycles of my life. Okay, we're going through major life changes right now. There are people that are going to fall out of my life. And I have to trust their actions, especially when they're not in sync with the words. Because a lot of times people will tell you all sorts of stuff and you want to believe them. You want to trust them. But can you trust their actions to follow through? What has been their MO, their method of operation? How are they demonstrating to you? Because people are always showing you their truth. But are you willing to see it? Or are you creating a story to deny it and justify holding out for it to be something other than what it is? And that's an old fear of abandonment. That's an old childhood wound right there. Think about your trauma responses. How do you respond to somebody who keeps dropping you, keeps letting you down, doesn't follow through? Do you keep holding out? Where did that originate? Look at the root trauma behind that. I have an example. So when I was younger, my mother would always want to do things. And there were times when I really, really wanted to believe that she would come through for me. And this occurred over the course of my life. But you know what? For whatever reason, there were many times she was unable to fulfill the promises that she would make. And I guarantee that hurt her more than it hurt me. Because when I look back, I also acknowledge and recognize that she was coming from a place where she wanted to be a protective mom, but she didn't always have the resources. She didn't always have the strength or the courage or the ability to serve in the way that she wanted to ultimately and ideally. So even in my life with other relationships, friends, intimate, etc., because all relationships matter. They're all a reflection of how you treat yourself and the boundaries you set, the standards you also maintain with yourself. People will show up to you the way you're showing up to yourself. And so, again, I'm going to go back to this theme of holding out, because this is also part of what I have been recognizing in my own life, is how in some ways I wasn't holding myself, that maybe I was dropping myself, that I wasn't acknowledging what I needed and asking and also valuing myself. Because in order for others to value you, you have to value you first. For others to hold you, you have to demonstrate how that looks and feels for you. What you want from another, you have to give to yourself. The golden rule, imagine that. The golden rule is a humane rule that starts with you. You cannot give what you don't have. And you cannot have what it is that you don't have to give. So when you're willing to recognize, okay, this is what I want, this is what my heart needs, tap into your inner child. Whew. What is the root cause of this pain and suffering that I'm feeling? Why do I feel excluded from certain groups? Because there's a lot of us that grew up seeking tribes, seeking groups and community to belong to. How many times have you been let down in that one too? Right here, right even now. Where there's so much virtue signaling around, oh, it's all inclusive, everybody is in it together, and in reality, the audio and the video are out of sync. People are not actually, it's all talk, but the action isn't resonating, it's not aligned. So you have to really come to a point where you honor the truth of what you see and what you feel, not what you want to believe. Because the root of suffering is you not accepting things as they are and wishing them or holding out for them to be something other than what they are. And that causes the biggest and the most discomfort and dis-ease within us. Because if we're not honoring where other people are at, how are they going to honor us where we're at? If you're allowing someone to mistreat you, it's typically because at some point you allowed it, number one, but you demonstrated it at some point. It doesn't mean you can't course correct, but the relationships in your life need to be uplifting and supportive. If they're not the type of relationships you want, which is why I go back to, are you inclusive or exclusive? Because in a certain sense, we go through cycles where we need to be exclusive. We need to protect our heart. We need to protect our sacred space. If we are all inclusive, then we become a doormat, and people take advantage of that. So if you just let anybody into your circle, into your life, look at your past. How many times have you done that? And then also tapped into, oh, I felt like something was off with that person, but you didn't trust it. So it's not that you can't course correct, it's that you just have to acknowledge, accept, not with regret, just, oh, when you know better, you can do better. So when you look at your life, where have you been so overly generous with your space, with your heart, with your time, your energy, and attention with other people? I've done that a lot in my life. It doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make me an overly righteous person either. It just shows that I'm a human and that I myself make poor judgments and have made mistakes. God bless us all, because without those mistakes, you wouldn't, notice, mistakes. You just missed an opportunity. The mistake is an opportunity in itself to course correct, because when you know better, you can do better. And when you make a mistake, it leads you to success. Without failure, you cannot succeed. It's only by stopping and not continuing that you fail. There's no such thing as failure, technically, because we're always course correcting in our lives. But when you allow people into your life and then you recognize, maybe this person doesn't belong in my life. Now it's time for self-love and care. Now it's time to discern what matters most, making yourself a priority, not just letting anybody into your inner circle, into your life. Because I know for myself, sometimes people use your life against you. They just assume and create a story that justifies and validates them being a bad human or being an asshole toward you. Or in cases of narcissism, they twist it. They put you on a pedestal, and then they knock it down. And then they use every opportunity to make you feel bad, trying to exhaust you. Because here's the other thing about inclusivity versus exclusivity. The people that deserve exclusive access to you are the ones that support, uplift you, and energize you. That's alignment. Now, when you feel exhausted and drained by people, that's misalignment. If someone is depleting your life force energy, you've given them access to you and they didn't deserve it, that's when it's time to find a way out. Or recognize how you can fix something within yourself that may influence that. But don't ever discount taking a break either. I'm not saying that everybody needs to be cut out of your life or cut off from you, but just notice the rings around you of the circles of friends that you have. You have the inner circle, the sacred trust. Those are the people that you trust your deepest, darkest secrets to. You shouldn't just be telling anybody about your heart, because not everybody's going to treat your heart with care, with tenderness, with love. Some people, they seek to hurt because somehow it makes them feel better. But even then, they really don't feel better. That's an illusion in itself. That's just part of an addiction and part of a coping mechanism that when others are miserable, it somehow lifts them up, but they really aren't even feeling it anyway. It's all up in here, and it's part of the ego game of being right versus happy. Imagine what kind of world we would live in if more people realized that the seeking is within, not going without. That when you are operating from the dark shadow side of ourselves, when we are coming from the unknown, unconscious traumas and those aspects of ourselves we don't want to confront, that's what's hurting us the most. So when you seek within and don't go without, you're also going to find what you seek is yourself. We want others to be a certain way. We're looking for the perfect partner. We're looking for whatever. You know, again, I go back to how many of us grew up not feeling like we belonged. And so what do? We're constantly seeking fear of rejection and abandonment. That's an old wound in itself. And so we seek out these groups, these communities, these people that are going to make us feel like we belong. But if we don't feel belonging in our bodies, we don't tap into the truth of who we are first, there is nothing outside of you that is going to fill that void, because the void is within you, not out there. So the exclusivity is about you being gentle and tender with your own heart, you choosing, this is my sacred circle, this is my space, and I only allow those who uplift and support me in it, as opposed to, oh yeah, everybody's in it together, come on in. Would you let just anybody into your home? I guarantee each and every one of us, we judge. And don't ever say you don't, because judgment is a comparison. It's not a cruelty. It is just the human element, because we are always in comparison. Everything we do and see and think and speak comes from comparing ourselves from the past, comparing us to one another. Doesn't make it a harmful thing. Judgment and discernment, I'm not talking about, like gossipy judgment, like, oh, that person, how could they do this? I don't like that, blah, blah, blah. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you see someone and you see the success of them and you admire them for that, you're comparing yourself. How could you not compare yourself if you came to the assessment and realization that, wow, they're successful, I wish I had that. I want that. I admire that. Just as equally, looking at someone and thinking, oh, oof, I couldn't live like that. I can't even imagine. Again, you're comparing yourself. Where's the compassion in recognizing, oh, wow, I am that too, or I wouldn't have recognized it. Either way, the success or the failure. Whatever you judge of another, you're also breaking your own heart, because really, we need to come back to, again, what is operating within us that gets us to even look outside of ourselves, to go without, to judge ourselves and compare ourselves to another. It's great to have a gauge, but don't get caught up. Don't get stuck in the story of, I wish I had that, or gosh, that poor person, because all of it's the mental manipulation. It's not healthy, but the awareness of it is. The awareness of it is because that's your key to change. Because what we see in another resides in us. There's no dismissing or denying it. So inclusive or exclusive, you have to decide. You always have to judge. You always have to decide what matters most to you. What is a priority in your life? Do you want to just let anybody into your life? Just because you want to be the right person, the self-righteous idea, this whole, it goes back to religion. It goes back to from the time we're born of how we should think of everybody else. Not at your own demise, not at your own expense. Because if you're putting everyone above yourself, eventually you will be depleted. You will be left to chance, left the victim of your circumstances, of your choosing. Because nothing's ever done to us. We allow things to happen. We allow the treatment from others. We allow, period. It's always a choice. And you get to choose, and that is your superpower. So being inclusive or exclusive is your choice. But also pay attention to how it makes you feel when you allow people into your life. Does it lift you up and energize you, or does it bring you down and suck the life force from you? Be honest with yourself. And don't just suck it up because, well, you know, I'm a good person. That's the worst excuse or story you could come up with that isn't going to serve you in growing and moving forward. If anything, it just keeps us stuck. And that's the definition of an abusive relationship, is allowing something just because it's familiar, it's comfortable, it's because we were told that's the way things should be. So we're constantly going around, going along to get along, depending on others to show up to us with this unspoken, unmet need that we seek outside of ourselves, that really we need to start within. Be attentive to your surroundings. Be selective of where you place yourself. Be selective of who you allow into your space. Don't just allow anyone access to you. Because if you do just allow anyone access to your heart, now I'm not saying expect the worst of anyone either, but you also have to be very mindful when you get to know thyself so well. You'll know, you'll feel, because it's, again, mental acuity. It's about awareness of the mind and the inner workings, that the breath is your energy, is your life force. Where attention goes, energy flows. That is your breath, that is your life force. And if you are giving that freely to just anybody and not paying attention to the sensations in your body, which are always telling you, always telling on the mind, what aligns, what is misaligned. That's the discernment that you have access to. Don't just allow anybody into that. Be compassionate, but also with awareness where you're operating from. When you are aware of your own triggers, your old traumas, your shadow, your shit, like if you own that, then it won't own you and you won't be operating from those spaces. But if you are continuously still avoiding that shadow work, that acknowledgement of those wounds, those will be the things that rule you. Those will be what runs the show. Conscious or unconscious, it's always running the show. When it's healed, then you are on that next level to where, oh, look at that. That used to trigger me. That used to upset me. It no longer does that. Wow, look at that. Woohoo! Win for today. Tomorrow it may pop up again because, you know, it's a cosmic joke, cosmic giggle. Universe will always come back with a test to challenge you, to say, hey, did you learn the lesson? Remember that lesson we had like 3 years ago? We're back. Just want to check. Just want to test you. Because life is a game and it is a series of tests. There's no right or wrong answer, because you'll always be able to recourse correct, you know, go along, traverse, change the trajectory of your life is up to you. It's just the choices you make. Everything is simply an experience. It's beautiful. So that's what I was sitting with as I wasn't sitting with it. I was out in the backyard picking up some pods and some weeds and such, and just reflecting on my own life, because that's what all of this is. When I share from the space of, this is how my mind operates, and I can go down a rabbit hole of just, wow, I am at a crossroads once again in my life where I'm seeing people drop out, and I have to grieve that. I have to honor that. And also appreciate and celebrate, because every single person in our lives serves us. You cannot deny that. You can try. You can act like, oh, I feel like I wasted my time. You never waste your time. There's no such thing as waste. The waste is, you know, just the garbage that you bring out. But essentially, everybody in your life is serving you to get to better know you. So what did I say? Remember, everyone serves us to know ourselves more deeply, so never feel it's wasted time. Be selective who has access to you. That's the smartest decision you could ever make for you. And sure, you're going to slip up here and there. I do. And then you're going to go, wow. You know, on my trip to Europe, I specifically went on this trip to revisit old life patterns, old life, like going to the Venice Film Festival and going through that scene. Like, it was very good for me to see, oh, yeah, I used to do that. That was okay. That was fun. It was a good time. It's no longer a part of who I am. I enjoyed, you know, revisiting my past in real time. I also recognized where when I was with people from the past, there was a little bit of a, wow, I think I would have been much happier to be by myself in a lot of cases. And I'm really grateful to have witnessed that in myself, because then I'm like, wow, I really trust and like being with me. I like the way I treat me. So maybe I was with people and I kind of held out, hoping that, you know, maybe we would do certain things, and maybe I didn't suggest things that I should have suggested. But essentially, when I put myself in other people's hands, I didn't always feel so held during my trip. There were a couple cases where I went, wow, I don't think I'll come back to this place again, or these people. And then there were some times when I recognized, wow, I really felt held. I really feel I appreciated those people in my life. I was exceptionally grateful for my friend Eric. You know, I have my stuff with him. He knows I love him. But essentially, I know in his heart, he was supportive and he wanted me to have a good time. And to that, I am extremely grateful. To my girlfriend Joya, who made the time to come pick me up in Rome and bring me to her home, even if it wasn't for very long, to catch up. That meant all the world to me. What made really good, you know, really felt good to me was when I decided to do the trip to Tenerife, because that was for me, and I absolutely loved the women that I connected with on that trip. Still do. And when I decided to do just the time by myself in Rome, that felt really, really good. And that as I have been reintegrating, coming home, it was like bringing home parts of me that I had left behind and leaving behind those parts that no longer serve. I feel more grounded, more focused, more confident in who I am, as I already felt, but this really solidified it for me. That I have no doubt of who I am, and that my heart is always in a good place, that my intention is always pure, to uplift, support, inspire people, to empower through my inspired living. That, hey, if you see something that I'm doing and that influences you, that inspires you, that brings something up, you want to do that too, just do it. I'm not here to tell you what you should do, but if something calls to you, why aren't you doing it? Sit with that. Live your life more exclusive. Nobody said you had to do what everybody else is doing or follow society and culture's manipulation of how you're supposed to think of everybody else but yourself. If you don't think of yourself first, you don't put that oxygen mask on first, you're no good for anybody else. And we have got such an upside down world right now to where there's conflict between people even knowing who they are and people who want to be treated special because they think they know who they are, but they really don't. It's crazy. If anything, my prayer for the world right now is that people just heal themselves, like find their truth, tap within, do the breath work, like really own, embrace those aspects that are hurt. Because actually, here's the truth of the matter. We're no longer the child that was was abandoned when we were younger. We're no longer, the one that was abused, or you just name the trauma from your childhood. That's not who we are. The pain is the attachment to the story, the resistance of the letting go, the significance that it gives us. There's so much psychology to unpack. It does not make you a good or a bad person. We've all had something traumatic in our childhood happen, in our lives happen. The choice is whether we're going to turn that into our message, clear that slate, literally let it go and not allow it to have power over us, to harness and alchemize it into our power, to let it fuel us, propel us forward. Wow, that didn't kill me. And quite strong as a result. I'm much more resilient. Essentially, our nervous systems, when we are triggered and freaking out in the world, people acting out, like I say, the monkeys flinging shit at each other, trying to get their unmet childhood needs, fulfilled and satisfied through one another, like, that's just your nervous system so out of whack that the way to clear and to cleanse is to really go through the body, because the mind can't solve the story. It cannot fix the same situation or the problem that it imagines, that it tells, because it's not even really the truth of the matter. You had an experience and we cling to it because we're told, oh, you poor thing. There's nothing wrong with you. In fact, it's what makes you human, is caring and acknowledging your hurt, your pain. But it's up to us to become the parent of that hurt inner child, to heal that. Our parents did the best they could. We came from environments and experiences and pasts that we can't change. But we can change the way we look at them. We can change the story we're telling about them. We can truly harness that and use that to be better. Because we didn't know better back then. They didn't know better back then. But it's us, up to us, to take that and do better. That's the true gift of healing, of doing the shadow work, of doing the work, to not getting stuck in the past. I operated from that place for a long time of my life. When I went back to Italy, I was like, oh my gosh, how embarrassing I was at certain points when I was in that space. Like, oh my gosh, a little embarrassed to the point where I was like, what are people going to think of me when I'm here? Like, but one thing that I felt, and that even Joya said, to see me, how much I've changed from that person that she first met back when I was dating Claudio, that meant a lot to me. That she appreciated and could see it, and she really admired that. She shared that with me, and that meant the world. To feel revered by somebody I revere, based on the work I have done for myself, that means something. That I don't just talk, that I am demonstrating, that I am the face of healing, that if I can heal, you can heal. If I can overcome adversity in my life, working in government service, being outcast, being, I can come up with the list. Does that make me a bad person for my experiences? No. And what's very interesting, and I've witnessed this time and time again in my past, is how people will actually, as much as they want to say they're inclusive, you may be vulnerable and you may express your heart to someone, and then they turn it around on you. And they feel uncomfortable with your sharing your vulnerability because that rubs a wound in them, makes them feel uncomfortable with your discomfort. Not that you're asking for them to heal it, but you're just asking to be witnessed and seen. And most of us, that's all we're asking for. We're not asking for someone to fix us, especially coming from as a woman. That when someone takes what you have shared from your heart and twists it and tries to make you feel like shit for them feeling bad, that you've broken open a wound for them, instead of recognizing that that's their hurt person trying to hurt someone else or punish them for their feeling what they don't want to feel. It's an irony in my life because as I have often been punished for bringing to someone's attention something they don't want to confront, whether it was a direct inquiry when I worked in government contracting and I pointed out a lot of the mistreatment of the personnel I was working with, not just myself. I spoke for the group when nobody else would speak. But they used that against me, even in the spiritual community, where I was working with my ex-partner who was a narcissist, and then having people just assume that because he was a bad person, that I should be treated like crap too. Or like when someone has been abused, which we'll use that as an example because I was in an abusive relationship with that narcissist, verbally abusive, and it got physical. Although interestingly enough, people held that against me. Pay attention that if someone is in an abusive relationship, are you compassionate toward that person? Or do you try to punish them and double whammy them because you didn't like the person they were with or the circumstances they were in? So are you someone that has compassion for that person? Do you reach out, try to help them, offer them some safety, some solace, even an ear to hear, to listen? Because what I experienced and what I've witnessed with my experiences around the narcissism, around other things in my life, is there are a lot of people that will claim one thing and then do another. And when I say this, I'm going to just flat out say, I had someone who, my neighbor, when I went over to apologize, trying to make peace with my neighbor actually said to me, I was worried about you. And I was held back. I couldn't get into this conversation at the time, but I walked away with my mouth open like, wow, this woman was nasty toward me as well as her partner, never reached out to check on me, but had the audacity to tell me she worried about me. I just did, again, the audio and the video weren't in sync. To tell me you cared or that you even worried about me but did nothing doesn't mean shit to me. That's virtue signaling. That's a perfect example of saying one thing and doing another. If you honestly were worried about my safety and you live right next door to my house, why didn't you reach out to me? You had my phone number. Why didn't you reach out to me? You were connected to me on Facebook. Why did you put the barrier, create the chasm, the distance between us, and then actually treat me even worse because of the other individual of whom you claimed you were worried for my safety? That she used those words exactly. I was worried for your safety. I was really worried about you. I'm sorry. I didn't see it, I didn't hear it, and I didn't experience that. So you telling me that may sound good, but to me, it feels icky and it's hurtful because in the end, it's like when you turn around and you basically, there's a victim, like a wounded animal. You go keep poking and prodding at it and you treat it like crap because it's wounded. And that doesn't, what is that? That's not helping or uplifting. If anything, it's making the person feel worse. So I say this because even still recently, there have been times I've had people say things to me that I'm really confused. Am I polarizing? Because I don't think I am. I just share from my heart. Me being disabled on Facebook or social media, does that make me a bad person? Did I deserve that? No. But yet people put so much weight, stock, attention, acting like social media is the judge and jury of the character of an individual, as if the person doesn't speak for themselves. So when I recently heard these different implications, pokes and prods, accusations and judgments against myself, I was really taken back. Like, I really need to understand, what does this mean? For someone to even imply that I could ever be polarizing. By saying it to me, I felt polarized against. Just by virtue of the fact that it didn't align with me. I'm like, whoa, I feel excluded. In fact, I feel attacked. And I walked away hurt. And I say this because nobody should feel that way. Nobody should try to make you feel less than you are. Because that's not a healthy way to communicate. To attack someone or to tell them they are something they are not. That's a judgment. I share this because maybe we've all done it at some point where we maybe judge someone and we said something we shouldn't have said, or maybe it was hurtful and it wasn't intended to be that way. Maybe we weren't even aware we were being hurtful. Maybe that was our coping mechanism for our discomfort. We try to make joke or light of the situation. That happens a lot. I come from a family where it's all about using humor to diffuse tension, to try to bring us back to the lightheartedness. My family's close. And there are times, like my sister and I have these conversations. My dad comes from the generation of, nothing comes without hard work. If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. Nobody ever does anything without expecting something in return, like with that animosity, when in reality, it should be a receptive flow. The give and the take is just natural. But that's part of the cults of personality. That's part of the old paradox and the paradigm of the patriarch. So just that idea, those statements, there's a lot of those old, state adages and the ways of saying things. And it's like, wow, I have compassion for my dad because he's still got that old programming and those old ways of thinking. So sometimes when he says things, it's not meant to be hurtful. He's just unaware of his impact, his influence. And, if you have the courage and the vulnerability to speak up and say, that hurt. It should say something, and it should bring that other person into awareness that, oh, wow, maybe I can, I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention. But if you're met with resistance, what that's really speaking to is the inability to take personal responsibility and be accountable on the other side. So just be mindful of the interactions and the people that you communicate with on a daily basis. And are they in your inner circle? Do they have access to you? Are you allowing them to treat you in a way that's not really in alignment with your higher self, with how you value you? Is your heart being held in devotion and reverence? Is it being honored? Is it being protected? If the answer is no, I invite you to step back and reevaluate just handing it over to anyone. Be more exclusive. Don't be so inclusive. There's a time and place for everything. And during these times, don't just let anyone have access to you. You deserve better than that. And so as I walk major life changes right now, I'm acknowledging a lot of physical sensations that have been coming up since I came back from my trip. When I have body work done, I'm sharing this for a reason, because I want you to look into your body. This is why I am so passionate about feeling it to heal it, about being an awareness of your body and the signs, the way it speaks to you, your body language. That is your GPS, your inner guidance system. That when something is shifting and shaking, like if you go to like a body worker, so I'm working with neuromuscular therapy, and last week he dug into my shoulders into places that nobody's ever gone before. God, that felt so good. This week he got in behind my heart, really deep into behind underneath the shoulder blades. That was some seriously tender stuff. And for 2 days, I have been processing and dealing with, wow, that's bringing up some junk. And it all revolves around major life change, because I go in. I'm all in. That is life for me. Is about healing. It is about feeling. And sometimes it doesn't feel so good, but you got to get good at feeling. It's not all rainbows and unicorns. You got to own the dark and the light. You got to embrace it all to be whole. You can't just, I just like this part over here and I'll take a little bit of that, because then you're fragmented. If you don't take it all and create the puzzle piece that is you and put it all back together again, then you go out to the world and you're going to keep looking and searching for the external to fill those voids. That's what that is. You are one whole being, and that includes all those aspects that you do or don't like about yourself. Stop looking for the pieces outside of yourself to fill the voids within you. That is in you. Only you can do that for you. Don't look for someone else to validate you. Don't look for someone else to make you feel worthy. That's for you to do. I'm speaking from personal experience. It wasn't until this past year I recognized, oh my gosh, I am valuable. And because people aren't valuing me, it was because I wasn't standing up to that. And that if people aren't following through to acknowledge my value, well, then maybe they don't deserve access to that. Because maybe they've been so entitled and feel enabled, and they had access, so of course they should still have access. That doesn't make it right. And it does kind of suck, because you got to go through the grieving process. Because again, change is like death, and you have to honor the cycles that come through. The anger, the sadness, the change in your daily routine, the fact that you want to pick up the phone and share something that would make that other person laugh. All of that's relevant. It doesn't make you any less of who you are. You are human. And all these glorious ups and downs, highs and lows, ins and outs are what make you you. So just pay attention. Just recognize. And don't dismiss inclusive, exclusive. Notice how it serves you in your life. When I've been too inclusive, people have walked all over me. The more exclusive I've gotten and value the people that I allow into my life, the richer it seems, the better, the more quality of people I allow, as opposed to just anybody. There's something to be said for that, and you should honor it. Appreciate. Value yourself first, and the rest will follow. And when you're in alignment with yourself and you know thyself so well, you're going to attract that. So if you're seeking your group, your community, your tribe, that will all fall in line when you are aligned. But you got to put your puzzle piece back together. Got to do the body work. Mind. First it's a breath. Get in conscious awareness of the mind. And when you know the mind and the inner workings, tap into the body's wisdom, because that's part of that too. It's a mind, it's a body, and a spirit connection that connects you to your soul, the wisdom. There's wisdom in all of it, and it has to be put together, the puzzle piece that is you. You need to be whole. And that's not denying anything or any experience you've ever had. Owning it so it doesn't own you. You are worthy. You are an aspect of God created to have all of these experiences. Don't judge the experiences. Allow them to be. Don't deny and try to make them into something they're not. Don't create the story. Why not just appreciate this opportunity we have to be all that we are here to be? Alchemize all that junk, because feelings really come from thinking. They're lodged in the body because they're not in alignment with the mind. The mind runs amok. It's up to you to get unstuck. I love playing with words. So what was the last thing? Pay attention. It's your life. It's your life now or never. I ain't gonna live forever. Who's that? Bon Jovi. All right. So from my heart to yours, I love you so much. I truly, truly hope this resonates and this speaks to your heart as it's speaking from mine. And just know, everything you wish, want, and desire in this world is up to you, choosing you. It will be given, and so it is. Like, comment, subscribe, click the notifications bell, and if this resonates with you, share it. Share it with somebody who needs to hear it. I love you so much. Have an amazing evening.